Hello, I'm Sally Callow, Managing Director of Stripy Lightbulb CIC. I'm just popping in on this wet and windy Tuesday afternoon to give you an update on one of the campaigns that we're currently running behind the scenes. What we are asking for is that the UK government officially acknowledges that half of long COVID cases meet the diagnostic criteria for ME/CFS. Vicky Foxcroft is helping us with that. Vicky Foxcroft MP is the Shadow Minister for Disabled People. She's been very supportive for the last 10 months or so, and recently she's asked a question specific to post-exertional malaise, chronic. Vicky asked this question on our behalf to ask the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care whether her department has made an assessment of the implications for its policies of the findings of Twomey et al., published in Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation Journal on the 13th of January 2022 concerning chronic fatigue and post-exertional malaise in people living with long COVID. The Department of Health and Social Care, courtesy of Will Quince, said no specific assessment has been made. As you can see, that was a non-answer. So I got back in touch with Vicky and she's now asked this question. So, a couple of weeks ago, Vicky asked the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, pursuant to the answer of the 18th of October 2022, to question 59159 on long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, for what reason her department decided not to collect this information. And this time, Neil O'Brien from the Department of Health and Social Care replied, and he said, the long-term effects of COVID-19 and myalgic encephalomyelitis are separate conditions as defined by the National Institute of Health for Health and Care Excellence. So obviously, I had a look at the NICE guideline for long COVID to see whether NICE definitively says do not treat long COVID the same as ME/CFS. Because if they state that definitively, there's no arguing with it. So I took a look. So as you can see, this is the NICE guideline for long-term effects of COVID-19. So where we need to go is identification, and then there is a short paragraph that is enlightening. This is the bit that I believe relates to ME/CFS. Post-COVID-19 syndrome may be considered before 12 weeks, while the possibility of an alternative underlying disease is also being assessed. So it doesn't necessarily say ME/CFS and long COVID are completely different. It's just open to interpretation, I would imagine. Anyone that's unsure, long COVID is simply an umbrella term for many different presentations of disease. ME/CFS is one of them. There are things like liver failure, kidney failure, myocarditis, stroke, heart attacks, dysautonomia, fibromyalgia, muscle activation syndrome. So that's why I believe NICE has said, yes, you can give a diagnosis of post-COVID syndrome after up to 12 weeks, but during that time you should be assessing to see if there is an alternative explanation for what's wrong, which is entirely what should be happening. I've had a quick scroll through the rest. I can't see ME/CFS mentioned anywhere. The only thing I've ever seen where they've said do not treat it the same as ME/CFS is in their graded exercise therapy and CBT guidance. And I think they said that because there are many different presentations of disease. So somebody with liver failure or kidney failure wouldn't have to avoid exercise. In fact, exercise is recommended for people with liver failure. So I can see why they're keeping it all separate. However, when there is quite a lot of international research that not only says half meet the diagnostic criteria for ME/CFS, but wider research has not been able to find any differences scientifically between ME/CFS patients that had the disease before COVID-19 and those that have had it as a result of COVID-19. Very, very, very little difference. And prior to COVID-19, two patients, so for example, me and my volunteer, who also has ME/CFS, we had no idea if we were biologically identical. We'd both been diagnosed with the diagnostic criteria. Therefore, we both had an ME/C.F.S diagnosis. And there are now many, many thousands of long COVID patients in the UK that now have an ME/C.F.S diagnosis. That's what's happening in the real world. Now we need it to be formally acknowledged and officially written somewhere to say, yes, we know that COVID-19 causes ME/C.F.S. Anyone that's done our training will know that there is a lot of political history here, and I can understand the reluctance, but surely data means better informed policy decisions. Data is needed, and that includes statistics on the amount of people that now have an ME/C.F.S diagnosis as a result of COVID-19, and also for the government to acknowledge that it's happening. Anyway, there you go. That's our update. Thank you very much for listening.